What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we have the ZG in for some work. Now originally I was not going to record this process. It's just another customer's car coming in for a quick B swap. You guys can see it right here on the stuff right here on the table, and I didn't want to show another repetitive video. I know the last several videos, or probably 100 videos before this one, has just been showing me wrenching on cars. My car, Integra's car, Paco's car, Joe's car, everybody's car. And I know you guys have been wanting to see like Mexico races or some type of racing. A little different from the current videos, but we just haven't been able to go racing. The drag strips are still closed, and I know the road race tracks are still open, but I don't have a car to do that. So I've just been here in the garage wrenching away. But soon, guys, we'll have some racing on the channel. But super pumped to start working on this again. I was supposed to start working on it today, but I have this car here, so I'll knock this out quick, and then we'll continue making progress on the KRX. So I figured, you know what, I'm gonna make this into a video. This is more of a like what you're gonna need to put a B swap in your EG, and EG in this case because that's what we have here. So anything 92, 95 to put a B into your car, I'm gonna try to cover everything. I'm not gonna show you guys the whole process, like pulling the engine out, swapping the other wind. I am just gonna talk about the parts list and kind of show you guys along the way some of the things to look out for. So right now, actually gonna pull everything out of the car. So this engine bay is completely stock. The engine's completely stock. I believe this is a DX model because D15b7 non-VTEC. No accessories like power steering, AC, and all that jazz is in the way. All the extra stuff you have to take out. This is going to be very simple. Now, like I said, I'm not going to show you guys the process of removing all of this out of the engine bay, but we are going to be talking about everything that we're going to need to swap the B series into an EG. So the engine of choice here is a JDM B20B. Now there are two models to this engine. There are the low comp and there are the high comp. This is the 98 spec. You can tell by the head stamp right here. It says 98 on that first mark right there, 98. And this is the low compression model. The high compression is the 992,000. Then there's the P8R version, which has a better flowing head, but in this case this is a low compression that he just picked up from a local importer. And there's a lot of accessories that we had to remove off this engine that we're not going to be using. So one of the first things I had to remove off the B20 engine is the intake manifold. We're not going to be using this because it's going to stick out of the hood given how tall it is, which is why they call it the giraffe manifold. And I removed pretty much the throttle body because we're not going to be needing this fast thermal idle valve or something, whatever it's called. And I also removed it so I can take all the studs and bolts for the other intake manifold. So we're not going to be needing that. This flex plate comes with all of the B20 motors from the importing shop, and this is for the automatic torque converter, so we don't need that. Remove all of that out of the way, and a lot of miscellaneous stuff here. So top half of the header, not going to need that. We have an aftermarket one over there. Remove the power steering pump and bracket because we're not going to be needing that. I removed this post mount because this is specifically for the CRV. Given that the engine sits super low in the engine bay of the CRV, this mount is super tall to accommodate it, and it's not going to work for the regular Civic or Integra swaps because your engine be hanging kind of low. Miscellaneous brackets and stuff we're not going to be needing, so I took all of that off. This engine's a 98, so we have this distributor that has pretty much like the RPM wires, the ignition input wire, and all that. I can convert this to OBD1 to work with that car, so the distributor seems to work out. Typically they come with the other one, which is like a single plug 8-pin, and usually you can't use that in the Civic. I could be wrong. It does come with an alternator usually, and it is OBD2. You can buy a jumper harness that converts the OBD1 alternator plug from your harness to plug into the OBD2. In this case, I'm just going to bridge them in and kind of save a little fundage there. I know it works. I've done it plenty of times before, so we don't have to get an alternator because we can use this one. Now, before he brought the car here, I did give him a checklist to make sure he can grab everything before bringing it here, so I don't have to do the runaround. A lot of the smaller stuff I'm not worried about, but the bigger items, the main key to getting this engine hanging in here, he was able to bring me everything right here on the table. So if you're buying an engine from an importer like the B20 right here on the floor, I'm going to take you guys in a little step-by-step on what you got to change out, what you got to install to get the engine ready to sit into his new home. So by now you guys should know that this is going to be more of an informative video. So there's going to be a lot of talking, guys, and I hope you guys can learn a little bit from it. I know you guys leave comments letting me know that you guys learned a thing or two from watching some of the videos, and that has always been the goal with the channel. You know what I'm saying? Like teaching guys a little something along the way of just really hanging out with me. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull the engine out, and we're gonna start with transmission, clutch, and Flybow. So most B20Bs from an importing shop comes automatic. You got to remove the flex plate, right, and get yourself a flywheel, clutch, pressure plate, typically a brand new clutch kit. In this case we're running a stage 1 competition right here, right. It comes with a pilot bearing right here, comes with a release bearing and the clutch alignment tool right here as well too. Before putting on the flywheel, this is the best time for you to change out your rear main seal, and in this case I don't have one, but this right here is the new bearing. I'm going to change that out right now. I already got the old one out, put the new one on, use the old bearing and a hammer. Once the pilot bearing is bottomed out, the flywheel is ready to be installed. When you remove the flex plate, the automatic bolt is a lot shorter. Okay, now it is very important to run the manual flywheel bolts, which is longer. If you run this guy, it's not going to catch enough threads. Vibration is probably going to pull the threads out. You lose all these bolts, you can make a lot of noise, probably destroy everything in the transmission housing and every clutch component in there. So be sure to use the manual longer flywheel bolts. Got a comp stage 1 clutch, nothing aggressive. It's got springs on it, so it's going to help the clutch pedal feel. Go ahead and clean this off real quick. On the GSR flywheel, it's going to have 6 holes for pressure plate bolts. I believe Type R has like 9 pressure plate bolts, 19 pounds. So transmission is really up to you on what choices of gear ratios you want for your setup. I recommended the B20 with the B16 transmission as a starter swap for somebody that wanted to B-swap their car. One, the B20 has a lot of torque. Two, the B16 transmission is short gear ratio, so you're really going to feel the torque of the B20 motor. This is an EM1 transmission, B16 gear ratios, S4C stamp, and VIN tag is attached. It says EM1. It is verified right here. The clutch kit does come with a release bearing, so we're going to change that out. We're going to lubricate right here a little bit and right here a little bit as well too. We're gonna need 5 of these suckers to put the transmission on. Dowel pin check. 1 here, none there. It is important to make sure you have your dowel pins to make sure the transmission is gonna go on straight. In this case, we only have 1, but 1 is better than none. One thing I did forget to ask is for a starter. So I found a starter on my transmission, and I'm just going to throw it on here. When you're installing your half shaft or your intermediate shaft, make sure you guys use the specific bolt for it. It has this little spacer thing on here. Make sure you have at least 2 of this right here to align your half shaft, because last time we didn't use 2 of these. It shook the half shaft loose, and then it stripped the holes out. So that was a pain to repair, to try to time insert it, but There we go. 2. And if you don't have a third one, use the same length 14 mil bolt, and it should be all right. There's my third one. So for the B series, there are 2 half shafts. There are the 9093 Integra and then the 9401 Integra. The 9401 has the male end right here for the driver's side, and the 9093 has the female side. For the passenger axle, they are practically the same, but make sure you get the correct driver's side axle per half shaft, and depending on which half shaft you are using, make sure you get the transmission seal to match it, because this is different between the two. So if you're using 9401, make sure you get 9401 seal. If you're using 993, 993 seals. So this is a hydraulic transmission which has the correct seal, I'm certain, and this is the 94 plus half shaft. So go ahead and bolt this in place. I did talk about the alternator. You can use the OBD2 if you buy the jumper, or you can wire it in if you knew the wiring diagram, which you can find on Google. Otherwise, if it's an OBD1 harness, it makes it easier if you had an OBD1 alternator. OBD1 and OBD0 is the same. The rounded plug, OBD2 is square. But at the end of the day, if you know how to wire it, that'll work. So we're going to keep it. Had to clean my hands for this one because we're going to be installing the intake manifold, and I don't want to get it dirty. This intake manifold has a half shaft bolt plugged up to a coolant port. Now, because the B20 comes with a giraffe intake manifold, it's better to opt for something like lower, obviously. So you can get yourself an OBD1 94 plus Integra LS intake manifold, B18B1, or you can get yourself like a Skunk 2 or a block setup, and with that new intake manifold gasket, all right, throttle body. Now, because this is a new manifold and we're not running the giraffe one, we don't have a throttle body, but he did provide me one here. And before I install it, I'm going to put the studs on. What I did notice is this is an OBD0 9093 Integra throttle body, and the way to really distinguish is OBD2 and OBD1 throttle body has map sensor integrated into the throttle body. You can see right here we only have a TPS and no map on top, because the DAs and the EF has their map sensor on the firewall. This will work, but I'm gonna have to run the map sensor off a vacuum line right here so the map sensor can work. I'm going to run it for now because this is what was provided. I don't have another throttle body, and I have the right gasket to work with it right here. So just going to slap that on there. Everything else pertaining to the intake manifold is self-explanatory. Idle air control valve, which I don't have. Fuel rail injectors, which I don't have. So if you guys are at this part of your installation, be sure to put all that on now. And typically new intake manifold doesn't have the IAT sensor. Be sure to throw one on there. And that's pretty much for the intake manifold. For the timing side, we were talking about the post mount earlier. We're not using the CRV post mount, which is a taller mount right here, right? You can see the difference, way taller, and that's going to make the engine sit at a slant in one of these cars. So it's very important to make sure you know which post mount you are running, so you can buy the specific motor mount for the engine to your chassis. In this case, we have a DC 3-post mount. 3 post means 1, 2, 3. There's 3 mounting point right here, and you can see the kit is for 9295 Civic, this car, right? Also interchangeable with 9401 Integra, and it says right here B and D series because they are interchangeable as far as mounts go. And then manual transmission, hydraulic transmission. Typically these cars are hydraulic actuated with the clutch, so you got to make sure you buy the hydro transmission, because you can't put a cable transmission in this car. You just got to buy a different specific bracket to run the clutch slave onto the transmission of a cable unit. But we are running a manual hydro because B16 EM1 trans with a 3-bolt driver's side post mount. So I'm gonna go ahead and install this right here, right there, these three guys, put the lower timing cover back on, and the crank pulley. It may seem like I'm using an impact for everything, but I do check it with a ratchet after. This is actually the best time to change out your timing belt, water pump, and tensioner. It makes life easier to do it when the engine's out of the car. I'm not provided with any of those, so I am not going to change it. And here we go with the lower timing cover. Make sure the shim is in here and facing the correct side. It is tapered, and that's supposed to keep the belt from walking. Because the keyway slot is upside down, I'm gonna go ahead and install the crank, and then I'm gonna slide the keyway in there. And the crank pulley bolt, I'm definitely gonna ugga this. Also, another great thing to change out while you're doing all this, alternator belt. Also, a B20 doesn't have the PVC system in the back of the block. Typically the black box that sits over here, which looks like this guy, right? Because it actually runs off the cylinder head right here. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull this guy out. This manifold already has one. Plug it right in, and that's your PVC system. When you're swapping a B series into an EG, you have to use the T bracket from the 94 to 01 Integra. This varies for chassis as well. Say if you're doing a B series and EF, you need the 9093 T bracket for the geometry. For the EM1s or the EJ6 or the 96 Plus, you need the 992,000 B16 T bracket. So be sure to get the right one for your car. Alright guys, so this is as far as I'm going to get tonight. I think I got everything that I could possibly put on the long block that I have available here, and everything else is going to be used off this engine. I'm pretty sure the idle air control valve can switch over because it is dual pattern. The shift linkage, shifter setup, I'm going to have to swap over to that guy. The injectors, the harness, all of that needs to be transferred over to here before I put that into the car. So I am probably going to spend an hour to pull this engine right now. It's like 10:30, and I am going to catch up with you guys tomorrow once we have the engine out of the car. Alright guys, so next day here obviously, and I got a super late start. I woke up super late because I slept super late, but we are making progress. So a couple hours ago I pulled the engine out, nothing in there. Sim cam's over here, and I've already pulled the engine harness off. You can use the stock engine harness out of this to plug into the B series motor, as long as all of the plugs like distributor, injector are matching, or using a conversion harness to make it all work. So in this case, we're going to be keeping the same injector, OBD1, right? So we don't have to modify the OBD1 injectors, but we are using an OBD2 distributor, and I had to look around for some plugs to make a jumper right there. Same goes for the alternator. If you're using OBD1, should be plug and play. If you're using OBD2, you can buy the jumper or bridge it in like I did right here per wire diagram. So harness is 100% installed, O2 sensor is installed, and I mean it's pretty much ready to go back in. I still don't have a fuel rail, but my buddy Paco has my stock GSR manifold. I asked him if he could take a look to see if I have a stock GSR fuel rail on it, but I'm not worried about it as of right now, because once the engine's in the car, I mean, I can work on this from the top, no big deal. As far as everything attaching to the engine goes is installed. We got the new clutch slave, starter, header, manifold, everything under the manifold is done out of the way. Again, the O2 sensor, speed sensor is going to have to come back out because we're going to fill it through there. I have the rear motor mount installed right there. It is identical to the stock one, and it is the same as the DC Integra. So I have this installed. So I have the C1 cam, idle air control valve swapped over here as well too. This manifold is compatible with both. What I mean by both is the short bolt holes and then the long bolt holes. The long bolt hole, you can see there's an extra hole right there in the back, and the single cam one works perfectly, so that's installed. I have all of the hoses routed in place. This guy right here on the throttle body, this guy right here, throttle body to the little port off the front water neck, but it is the same one as the guy that's coming off right here. This one's tucked away because there's no port for it, which, like I said, is the same as that guy, so this one is blocked off. OBD0 throttle body, which doesn't have the map sensor on the top like the OBD1, like this guy right there. So what I did was I took the map sensor, I bolted it right here on the bottom of the throttle body. Got a vacuum line right there in the back, which loops up right there, goes right here, and that should work. Plugged in, TPS, don't get these guys mixed up. Got the driver's side mount, red just like the core. Transmission mount going in. Guys, where did we leave off? So we got the engine planted, right? We got all the motor mounts installed. But I've been having a dilemma with the rear T-bracket. I couldn't get the bolts to line up at all, and it finally clicked to me. The rear T-bracket is an automatic unit, and the automatic is definitely different from the 5-speed. And I was waiting for my buddy Paco to show up with his rear T-bracket since he is not needing it anymore. Grab my measuring tape here. The automatic rear T-bracket has the bolt holes closer to each other, so this is the automatic. This is what was provided, and if you look, we're at about 3 inch, right, from the top of here to the bottom. It's about 3 inches, give or take. But over here, if you look, we're at about 3 1/4, and that was kind of the amount that I was you know, far off as far as bolting the 19mm bolt to the transmission goes, and this is the correct one. In the meantime of waiting, I installed the axle, the forks, the suspension stuff on both ends, just to kind of get that out of the way. And I did button up everything around the engine, all of the hoses, the vacuum lines. I need to make a throttle cable bracket because we are using the stock EG throttle cable, and making a bracket is not a big deal. Paco also dropped off my GSR intake manifold right there, and we were able to snag the fuel rail off of it right here. These injectors are from the single cam, which will work perfectly fine in the B series, stock for stock. And I just want to show you guys really quickly, these guys look the same. Single cam, B series, single cam. I am going to switch the regulator over as well, but I want to show you guys, even though it looks the same, the bolt patterns are way off. So if you can see right here, right, that one lines up, that one doesn't, and it gets worse over there. So this is GSR. I'm gonna clean the injectors real quick, and then I'm gonna get that installed, put that on, run the harness on it, and that'll be that. So the cool thing about having a welding machine is you're able to make whatever it is that you need to make when you don't have it. So throttle cable bracket, we didn't have one because, one, the manifold was new. Two, we are left with the stock single cam cable, and I took a P75 bracket, right, and I added some flat stock to it. I cut the tab where the cable goes through, welded at the very end over here. I put it in the middle so we have adjustability forward and backward. Got a little slack, but it's fully functional, so that's out of the way. Engine nicely solid. I don't think there's much left here in the engine bay, so I'm gonna go ahead and crawl underneath the car, pull the shift linkage out. I think that's the last thing before fluids and ECU. All right, guys, so we are back here with day number 3. So I did finish up the car yesterday, right? We got it to turn on, and it was a little too loud. It was like 11:30, open exhaust, and we shut it off right away because something sparked. Something sparked right here, and it didn't stay sparking. It sparked and then it shot it, and it was sparking everywhere else. So not sure what that was, but I will sort that out in just a second. But I had to close it last night as well too, because the shift linkage is not the correct one. So when you're doing a B swap into an EG 9295, you need the 94 plus Integra shift linkage. Now the one that was provided, this one right here, this gold one, he was told that it was a Type R. Me, I was like, right, Type R is gold. But I noticed that this bar right over here, it's not as thick. If you guys don't know, the Integra has one big bar, you can see right there, and this one doesn't. This one looks like an EF. Now I say this because typically when you get a DA shift linkage to try to put into your EF, you have to cut it, shorten it, and weld it back together, taking some length off of it. But if you look right here, right, this bar right here is matched up at the joint, but you can see the difference, right? This is taller. And this stabilizer bar, right, equal down there, you can see where the shifter mounts to. It's also far apart. I had this in the car yesterday, not realizing it, and it was super short, so I said hell with it, I'm gonna close the garage. So I went to the storage this morning to grab that shift linkage, which came off of Kat's GSR engine, which she couldn't use, and she has a house part in her car now. So we're gonna be using that in here, and I think that's pretty much the last piece. Throw the wheel back on, bleed the cooling system, drop the car, and it should be ready to go home. All right guys, so shifter is back in. All the gears seems to work. So this particular setup is just a stock B20, and you can use a P75 LS ECU from a 94, I don't remember what year, it goes up to 94, 97, OBD1, I could be wrong, but P75 OBD1 LS ECU. You can use a stock ECU on a B20. You couldn't use a chip unit, you couldn't use S300 or any other standalone ECUs of your choice. But because it's a stock engine, stock ECU is going to work perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and get this car to turn on for you guys real quick. I got my voltmeter set up just to make sure that the alternator is working and charging, but I did notice that the battery is a 2014. So we did get the clutch blade out because we installed a new slave. Checking your light off. No RPMs. Everything is shifting. Charging, that's good. So now I'm gonna do the coolant. So guys, I've been chasing bugs for a little while now. The alternator stopped charging after idling for about a minute or so, right? The voltage on the meter was like 14 plus, and then I watched it drop 13, 12, and as soon as I took off the ground battery post, car died. The car started acting all weird when the battery was dying, and I couldn't get the engine in the time. It was idling super high. So right now the owner is bringing me another alternator so I can slap it on there, make sure the charging system is working before he takes it. And another issue I had was the idle air control valve. I started putting coolant, I was bleeding it out, and then I seen a whole bunch of coolant gushing out of the idle air control valve. The bottom port, the flat plate that bolts up to the idle air control valve was somehow bent, and it was gushing coolant in between that, passing the gasket, you know, throwing a whole bunch of coolant everywhere. So I bent it back, I belt sanded it flat, bolted it back up, ran the car again before it died, and it's not leaking anymore. All of these little issues are going to surface when you're doing the swap, so expect it when you guys are doing it on your guys' car. But this video was pretty much just to cover like the things you're going to need to put a B in your EG. So I hope this video isn't too boring with me talking a lot about all the parts needed, but pretty much the car turns on with everything I explained here in the video. So I am going to kill the video right here. If you guys enjoyed this video a little bit with some of the information I threw out, be sure to hit the like button. I am going to resume working on the CRX tomorrow, so if you guys want to see some of that, be sure to hit the subscribe button. But with that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.